Happy Sunday. Thanks for joining me on my first ever Ask TV video edition. So we're gonna jump right in. I got 17 great questions that are kind of all over, cover a whole range of things. I have questions about what my mantra is, going pro questions, training questions, diet questions, questions about chasing your dreams, the future, and just, fun questions to answer. So let's get started. Hannah, thank you for this question. She asked if I have any quotes or mantras that I lean on during training or competition. And the answer is yes, I have two. One quote is attributed to Buddha when he said the only victory that matters is the one that you have over yourself. So conquering yourself is the only victory that matters. That's important to me because I'm in competition with a lot of elite world-class people, and always focusing on what they're doing is detrimental to what I can do. And so I only focus on me. It's basically me versus me all the time. And that allows me and frees me to focus more on my own execution and to be proud of how I perform. The other one is physics doesn't care. My real version of that is more explicit, but I don't know how old you guys are, so I'm not gonna curse. I love that quote because you're not gonna always feel perfect in training or in competition, but physics is one of those things where if you do what you're supposed to do, you will get the result you're expecting because it's science. There's no gray area, there's no wiggle room, you don't have to guess. So I like to fall back on that for times when I'm really nervous or weak or anything that's like anything adverse, really, because it's never perfect for me. I wish that were the case, but it never is 100% smooth sailing, and I always can lean on those two quotes. I got two going pro questions, one from Tawny about the best advice for someone going pro and finding sponsors. Finding sponsors might be the hardest thing of all. Going pro in track and field is the easiest thing. The only thing that is required for you to be a professional in track and field is, if you're American, is that you're not in college or an NCAA athlete. Otherwise, you are what's considered post-collegiate or professional, and you are free to enter competitions, and if they have prize money, you're free to earn that prize money. Securing sponsorship is another matter entirely, and typically it requires you to showcase major performances, and then they hop on your bandwagon. It's often not the other way around. It's hard to pursue sponsors and then start performing. So I think the focus would be trying to get as good as possible in your chosen event and really just focus on that. And hopefully you have a good support system around you, because it is a little bit costly to start out if you don't have a sponsor. I'll provide the link to the blog that I wrote about what it actually costs to perform at high levels, so that you can have a more realistic, an actual understanding of the things involved. I mean, the blog is a little bit extreme because I've been doing this as a professional for 13 years. So I've got a lot of quirks inserted into what I think it takes, but you can take that as a template and kind of see what I'm talking about and what is on the line for you. Ray wants to know if I have any advice on a 20-year-old pursuing professional career in sprinting and jumping. First of all, I love that you want to do both events. I hope to make that popular again like it was back in the day. Ray, the answer is pretty much the same as the previous answer. You will probably, at 20 years old, either out of university, and so technically you can be classified as a pro athlete. Just start competing and keep training and see where you fall, and just keep pursuing the mastery and remain a student of those two events. And you will, there are so many meets all over the world that you can compete in, that you can start to compete as a professional even at 20 years old. I have some training questions from Nigel and Abby. Nigel wants to know how he can be my training partner. You can move to Holland, you can hire my coach. Basically how it works is each of us hire a coach. That coach trains or is stationed in some specific location, and all of us who individually hired that coach end up becoming training partners because we all are there for the coach. So we don't always choose each other, but we did choose the coach. So that's how the pro training partner situation works. Abby wants to know how she can get better at the long jump. That is the $1 million question. Still working on that. But I can tell you how you can improve. The long jump is 3 parts: the approach, takeoff, and the landing. So improvement in any of these 3 areas is going to contribute to overall improvement. So as far as the approach, work on getting faster on the runway and consistent, so you don't have to stress about whether or not you're going to hit the board or foul. For takeoff, try to focus on taking off in the middle of the runway, not, you know, far left, far right. Also work on knee drive at takeoff, because the more air time you have, the longer your flight time, which means longer distances. And for your takeoff, really just work on your core strength so you can keep your legs up as long as possible, because again, the longer you're in the air, the farther your jump is. All right, then we got a few diet and weight loss questions, which are really good. So Mary, Ayla, and Mauricio all had questions about diet. Mary wants to know if she can lose weight that she gained when after stopping running track, and come back and still be as fast. So there are a lot of variables when it comes to speed, and weight is one of them. So the first thing you have to do, Mary, is lose the weight if that's what you want to do. After you lose the weight, speed can be developed. There's no way to know if you can be as fast as you were, but you can definitely be faster than you are now. I know that seems like a Captain Obvious statement, but that's the truth. You can be faster, but mass is one of those variables that counts against you twice when it comes to speed and velocity. So if you can drop any of it, then you can really start to work on your speed and see where you're at and see how far you actually need to go. But right now, it's gonna be kind of hard to judge how fast you really are because you're carrying extra weight. Okay, Ayla, the best diet structure for sprinters. Okay, first of all, everybody is different. So this, what I'm about to tell you, isn't gospel truth. It's my truth and works for me. But what I have learned through having my own nutritionist and going to school and paying attention and reading books is that sprinters don't actually need a lot of carbs, because we don't tap into those systems that require that kind of energy. So as a sprinter, I think the first 2 things you should do, for anyone, take out the sugar. Take out the sugar in your diet, because it's a toxin and your body doesn't actually need it for anything. Your body just gets addicted to it because that's just the kind of potent thing it is. And then reduce the carbs. And if you eat carbs, if you're one of those people that just cannot stop with the bread or pasta or, you know, the pancakes and waffles at breakfast, that's what you should do. Eat them at breakfast. When I eat carbs, I eat my sweet potato, which is the one carb indulgence I allow myself on a regular basis. I eat it for breakfast. So breakfast should be, you know, protein, maybe carbs. You can have your oatmeal then, that's cool. Then 3 hours later, eat a snack, eat something else. So your snack should be something that has good fats, more protein. So we're talking nuts, like string cheese, anything like that, protein shakes, anything like that. Try to eat every 3 hours. Dinner should be the same template as breakfast and lunch minus the carbs, right? You don't need to go to sleep on carbs. You don't need carbs to sleep. And you'll find that if you can eat every 3 hours, reduce the carb intake, and cut the sugar from your diet, your body will lean up. And like I was mentioning earlier, to Mary's question, the leaner you are, the more you can get out of your body. You will reach an optimal weight. And that's really important for anybody trying to be an elite athlete and perform on an elite level. Which brings me to Mauricio's question, which is super important. He wants to know how I avoid binge eating. So binge eating is a really unhealthy habit. It's basically you deprive yourself of something for so long, and for whatever reason you overindulge and it becomes like a regular pattern. So for example, like let's say I don't eat pizza, and maybe I didn't eat anything all week just so that I could get to Saturday and eat 5 large pizzas. That's binge eating. The way an athlete who's on a meal plan, because diet is a really ugly word to a lot of people, can avoid binge eating is by not depriving themselves of things. So basically, in those meals that I talked about for Ayla's question, you want to eat every 3 hours, but you can have good snacks. You can make good choices. And if binging is a problem for you, take a look at what you're binging and what you're drawn to. Everything in moderation, it can work. But the problem is, athletes like us, we tend to be extreme. We train extreme. We want things faster than usually it takes, and our patience is quite low when it comes to making improvements and gains. So I understand the temptation, but don't do that, because that is harmful to your body and hustling backwards basically for the goals that you're trying to accomplish. So if you're one of those people that doesn't eat sweets all the time, and then for whatever reason goes to the grocery store, fills a whole cart with sweets, and then eats them all over the weekend, eat the sweets in moderation. Have 1 sweet a day, which is better than having 35 on Saturday. We've got some dream chasing questions from Miranda and Joel. Miranda asks, what do I do when I'm just not feeling confident and fast enough and I'm running out of time to hit marks? To Miranda, I say, like, are you in my head? Because that's kind of how I feel right now. And how I felt at some point in almost every season, honestly. This is not something that goes away. What I do is I tell someone about it, because as soon as I start talking about it, that fear and that concern releases its power over me. And then I can shift into problem solving mode rather than worry mode, right? And so in this case right now, what I do is I sit down, I look at my meet schedule, I look at competitions coming up and decide what's important to me. Which meets do I want to compete really well at? And then I work backwards from there. Like, how can I get myself ready for this specific meet? And what that does is it takes the pressure off of you feeling like you need to have an Olympic gold medal performance at every single meet along the way. So shifting your focus to something that's important to you, working backwards. And by working backwards, I mean working on the calendar so you can see, you know, how your training is supposed to progress and in your training milestones up until that important competition for you. It settles you down some, which is what we need at this point, because we're starting to feel anxious about our progress. And anxiety on top of frustration, on top of stress, is only going to compound the issue. So, to summarize, choose a meet or 2 that are important to you on the calendar. Then take your calendar and look at how you can prepare, or you and your coach can prepare you for those specific meets, and go from there and focus on that. And then every day you'll be more appreciative of the gains that you made and the progress that you're making, and you don't have to stress about the other small meets along the way. Joel asked, at what point do I need to admit that you don't have the means to achieve your dream? This is a hard one because nobody wants to feel like or be seen as giving up on a dream. However, sometimes the whole purpose of having a dream is so that you go through that process. And the journey is where you learn about yourself and gather some real life skills, right? If the goal is to make the Olympic team, I would say the first thing you do is you need to do some market analysis. You need to become a student of the event. Look at the statistics. What time made the team? How old were they? Where did they train? Do you know what their training program was like? And where do you fall in comparison? See how close or how far you are. And then figure out how you can close that gap. And if it costs more money than you have available to you, figure out how you can raise that money. Maybe take all that information to a company, a local business who might want to support you on that journey to help you try. I don't want to tell anybody that, it's time to shelve your dream. But it's also not a failure to change your dream. I just want everyone to be aware of that. There's a difference between quitting because it's hard and changing your dream because that's actually not the path you're supposed to take. We've got some questions about the future, my future actually. Nathan wants to know what I want my legacy to be. I want my legacy to be that I was a great sprinter jumper or jumper sprinter. I really want to be labeled as both. I really want a sprint medal. It's I really want, I've gotten so close so many times. I still want that. And that is like a really deep personal goal of mine, is to prove to myself that I belong on the line with other sprinters. I am not sure why. It's one of those things I still feel like I need to prove to myself, but it's there, and because it's there and planted on my heart, I'm gonna go for it. I also want people to think back on my career and think back on me as a person and say she tried to give back to the sport by mentoring younger athletes. That's really important to me because this is one of those sports that's been around hundreds of years for a reason, right? It's attractive, seductive, and it doesn't require a lot of equipment, and anybody can get better, and I love that about it. And also, it's about physics, and y'all know I love physics. And I really just want to help connect those dots for a lot of younger athletes who may not have the best coaches maybe available in their towns. Really expose them to a lot of resources that can help them get better. Matilda wants to know if the book I'm writing is an autobiography or a self-help book, and when it will be ready. Good question. So the book I'm writing is a memoir, but it actually is a little bit, it's obviously autobiographical, but it can be classified as self-help, I guess, because I am trying to relay some of the lessons that I've learned from some of the crazy things that I've gone through in my life and in my career. When will it be ready though? That's the $1 million question. I am 32,000 words into this book, and it's not easy to write because sometimes I recall and have to recall unpleasant situations and conversations, and so it's like reliving those things all over again, which isn't always fun. But there are also really fun parts that make me smile and laugh, and I'm happy to remember them. It's going slowly because I don't just want to write a book that reads like, and then this happened, and then this happened, because that's boring. I'm writing a book that I would want to read. And because I read a lot, I know exactly what that is. And so it's taking a lot of time. Alright, I've got some fun, interesting questions coming up. Bo wants to know if I'm single. The answer is not exactly. I was married, I filed for divorce, and I'm currently separated, but not yet legally divorced. So yeah, complicated. Eric wants to know who my track heroes are. My track heroes are anybody that did more than one event and did them well. So Jesse Owens, Carl Lewis, Jackie, to name a few. So I don't have just one, but I have admiration and respect for anybody who could get out there and switch events and do them with mastery, because that's what I'm going for. Coach J. Jones wants to know what event I prefer to do first when I have to double at a meet. I prefer to run the 100-meter dash first, or the 60 first. I feel like the sprinting will warm me up for the runway, because on the runway I'm actually just trying to be a sprinter who jumps at the end. And so sprinting first kind of gives me that extra intense warm up before starting the long jump. When I do it the other way around, my legs are heavy because jumping is an extreme load on the body. The pelvic bone shifts, your spine compresses, and sometimes when I come to the race from the long jump, I am working with an upslip and just things are all out of whack and my legs are dead. So it's a lot harder that way. It can be done, it's just a lot harder, and I would prefer to get the sprints out of the way first. Samantha wants to know who my favorite female athlete is. I'm gonna go with a gymnast, Simone Biles, because like I said earlier, I respect, appreciate, and admire anybody who can do more than one thing and do it well. And I want to get to the point where I can walk from one event to another and just know I'm gonna nail the execution. I am going to kill it. I'm not there yet, even after all this time being a professional athlete. I'm not there yet, and I really love that she has that confidence and that consistency. Clifford wants to know, was it more difficult to run unopposed in 2016 during that crazy relay debacle, or if it would have been easier running with other people? And he also wants to know when I'm coming back to the States. So to answer the first part of the question, that was the hardest thing ever. First of all, we were the only people out there. And in the call room, we were the only people in the call room. And so it was really like being under a magnifying glass and everybody's looking at you. And we weren't sure how we were going to be received because we had gotten Brazil disqualified. And here we were in Brazil, and most of the people in attendance were Brazilian. So we assumed that when we walked out, we were going to get booed, like bad. And I told the girls, I said, hey, we might get booed, but let's just block it out and run. And then we have a certain time to beat, so we have to just leave it all out there. But as I was walking to my blocks, all these crazy questions started to float through my mind. Like, are there going to be other blocks set up in other lanes, or just one set of blocks? Where's the starter going to stand? Is he going to stand like right next to me and basically whisper the commands to me because it's just me and him? What if I false start? Like, am I disqualified from the race? All kinds of crazy things because I had never been in that situation before. And so I was honestly the most nervous during the start because when there are other people in the race, nobody is just staring at my start, And so I really just felt all of the extra scrutiny. And when we started to run, I wasn't sure how fast I was running, because I used the stagger to really gauge and adjust the speed to know how fast I'm running. I can use the other women in the race ahead of me to kind of tell, like, if I catch one, then I know I'm rolling. But if there's nobody, how do I know? And we're running for time, so it's very stressful. So yeah, it was harder to run by ourselves, even though a lot of people at home felt like it was unfair because it's easier to run by yourself. Not the case. It's much more difficult to run by yourself. When am I coming back to the States? I'm actually flying back to the States February 7th, so I'll see you guys soon. And that's a perfect way to end. That wraps up Ask TV. I hope more of you join me next time, and thank you so much, guys, for your great questions. Bye.